everybody, it's Romania Black. So, about a week ago or so, I finished Fire Punch. And I was like, I've looked at Chainsaw Man, Look Back, Goodbye Eri, just listened to the song, Fire Punch. But yet, I'm not ready to move on from Fujimoto. Far from it. So, I've been told a while back while I was watching Chainsaw Man and while I was reviewing Look Back and Goodbye Eri that there was going to be a compilation or an anthology of Fujimoto's like one-shots that he had done in his earlier life. You know, he's like my age writing this story, Chainsaw Man right now. And so I was like, well, that'd be cool to like look through his anthology of works because I like Fujimoto as an author. Fujimoto has a very distinct style. He's kind of like, to me, he's like the Quentin Tarantino of manga, right? Because he has a very distinct style. You just know it's Fujimoto. The moment you see it, you're like, that's a Fujimoto piece. There's just something about the tone, something about the artwork, something about the humor and how dark it can be, but yet still be kind of like one of those things. It's very interesting because I feel like there's a lot of mangaka that have very unique styles, like Isayama that does Attack on Titan. His works don't have a lot of humor with it, but it's very distinct, kind of like, you know, very, very dark, rigid humor. And I feel like Fujimoto's humor is a little bit more, it's a little bit more, not goofy dark humor, but like a black comedy. It's just like, it's just really in your face and abrasive. Right? And just anytime you read a Fujimoto work, or what I've read so far, you can just find certain tropes and themes and symbolic elements that are very akin to his style. And I love it. So, of course, I wanted to look at the anthology. But there are, right now, the ones we're going to look at today is for Fujimoto 17 to 21. So these are artworks he did before he could legally drink. I don't even know what to make of that. And then I know that there's one from him from like ages 22 to 26 that's coming out later this month. And I'm actually going to be hopefully getting that copy and doing a review of it in preparation for our Fire Punch live stream that's going to be hopefully around May. So around May, I'll put a post on Patreon as well as the community post on YouTube. I would like to do a live stream to talk about Fire Punch, to talk about season 1 of Chainsaw Man, not the manga, season 1 of the anime, and then talk about all of the one-shots that I've read of his. So that's the idea. So I'll be looking at this one, 17 through 21, and then later on this month, hopefully I'll get a chance to review 22 through 26 in preparation for that live stream. Or that's the idea anyway. That's the thought behind it. So I have no clue what to expect with this. I literally went onto the retail site that sells this. I went on there, just clicked buy, and just said, all right, I knew I was going to review it and react to it. I didn't read the description, didn't read anything. I just know it's 168 pages. That was it. And the only other thing I know besides that is that it was purchased and sponsored very graciously by the contributions of those over on Patreon. So for those of you on Patreon, thank you so much for helping me to buy this manga, to do this reaction today. I have several tiers on Patreon, one just for Discord access and polls, one to see reactions like this a week early, and then our philanthropy tier, which are kind individuals who go out of their way to support me in ways I definitely don't deserve. So these following patrons, thank you all so much for going above and beyond and giving me some extra funds each month to help me to sponsor these videos on streaming sites, to help pay for subscriptions, and to buy manga like this that I can do reactions over. I really appreciate it. So thank you to Edgar, Shimoyama, Arjo, Kenny, Tyrone, Nameless Monster, Dana, as well as Truck, and Translucent Men, be happy, and am I forgetting someone, Edgar? But you all know I'm very grateful for your support, so thank you all so much. All of my love. I really appreciate everything you all do for me. Thank you. So, with that being said, I have no clue what to expect. I've got this pulled up. There's a world, there's a boy on the moon. I'm assuming the boy on the moon is supposed to be Fujimoto. We shall see, but I'm excited to go through this with y'all and just see what kind of stories get cooked up, because knowing Fujimoto, I may cry, but it's probably gonna be trippy, and it's probably gonna be fun. So we'll just see, won't we? So we are gonna look at Fujimoto, and it says before Chainsaw Man, like that's his big claim to fame, right? Before Chainsaw Man 17 through 21, and we're gonna look at it here in 3, 2, 1, and let's do this. I'm like sweating and I've sobbed and I shouldn't be surprised. Damn it, Fujimoto. There's just something about, before I get emotional, when I get to Sasaki Stop the Bullet, it's like, it's over. It's going to be a done deal. But there's something about Fujimoto as a writer that is very understated, and he can take, and it's a gift. I don't know how he does it, but he can take a moment and a piece of artwork and convey like such a transformative message in just like a single frame. And it just like, I don't know. When I was in college, I had a friend, and he's still alive, but I have a friend that he writes poetry, and he would always do live readings of his poetry, and he has such like an innocent like soul. He's such an innocent, like heartwarming, beautiful soul, like the nicest person you'll ever meet in your life, right? But he writes, he's originally from India, and he writes about his experiences moving from India to the United States. And he talked about like growing up in India and his relationship with his mother and his father, and his experiences because he's gay. And so he talked about his experiences about his sexuality and everything in his poetry. But there's just something about the way that he talks and about the way that he reads poetry that is so pure and beautiful and genuine that every time I hear him speak, even just thinking about it, every time I would hear him speak in public, I would cry and sob, and his poetry would just make me just instantly like burst into tears. And he'd be like, why are you crying? He's like, this is not anything to cry about. And I'm like, there's just something about his voice and the emotion that it carries in it. It's just like, it's so pure. And like reading Sasaki Stops the Bullet, I was like, it just all hit at once. I was like, oh my God. It very much had a look back feel to it. And I very much could see how when Fujimoto was talking about in the afterword, that look back kind of was inspired by it. And I was like, yep, no, I see it. I see it so well. It's just, it's there, right? But God, I don't know why Fujimoto's work makes me such a mess, but it's like Violet Evergarden, Tatsuki Fujimoto. Like those two things are going to get me every single time, no matter what. And I'm like, but God, these were so good. He is so talented. Like to be 17 years old, 17 to 21, and this is what you crank out. Shut up. Not even fair. Not even fair. It's just like, and again, like I said, the Quentin Tarantino of manga. There's a style to it, right? An aesthetic. And there's little tropes and twists that even when you know it's a trope, even when you come to expect it, the way that he does it, it's just, it's so good. So let's go through these and talk about them real quick. The chicken in the schoolyard, the reveal that the man was an alien too the whole time was such a good twist, right? God, having come off of Fire Punch and reading that, this first one here felt the most fire punchy out of all of them. It felt the most fire punch out of the 4 stories because it's about aliens. It has kind of like a surreal quality to it, but the idea that humanity does go extinct at the end and there's like a time gap there, that to me felt like Fire Punch, that kind of like existential dread that it gives you, right? And he talks about how like his inking, like I have a book that's about like, cause I do like drawing a lot and I haven't drawn in a long time and that's a problem, but that's a thing in its own. But I have a book about making manga and drawing it, and the way the artwork is in the first story reminds me a lot of like the first draft in the books that I got about drawing manga. And Tatsuki Fujimoto even admits it. He's like, yeah, this was kind of like, I got impatient. I did it all in one draft. I just went straight from the draft to the inking. I didn't do like the necessary like steps of the draft. I just wanted to get the final product. And it kind of has that feel to it. It doesn't, the detail's not all there. There's some stuff that looks kind of superimposed. It's not the Fujimoto artwork that we know from his later works. It all feels very, very like the rough draft is what we went with, right? And that it definitely has that vibe. I also love that even back at age 17, Fujimoto was like subverting gender expectations. Like you have the girl alien going to school and she's all like buff and everything with the muscles and the deep raspy voice. It's like, oh, it's so good. And then the idea, the moment they were like, oh, let's go feed the chickens, they're bigger than I thought. I'm like, they're gonna be people. And yeah, it was the people, but it was the alien and the little girl. And the girl that he saved, right? That he ate all the people around her, right? That aliens just come and the thing about it, the aliens eating humans, I'm like, okay. And then the idea of, well, people eat cows and pigs, so why can't we eat humans? My whole thing with that has always been like, cows and pigs aren't as intelligent as humans, but that's a whole nother discussion. That's a whole nother thing. But yeah, the discussion is still there. And the thing about it is that the alien was keeping her around and saying like, oh, they'll go back to their home planet and we'll just live like this until they leave. And I'm like, but they weren't going. And so was he really just holding out till she got to where he could eat her? Or did he really care about her? It seems like he cared about her, right? Because he did try to save her. And then the one alien, turns out he's the one that was harboring the other aliens, and he's afraid. I like that Fujimoto chose the nose-picking, chicken-eating alien as the one to represent him on the cover. Absolutely hilarious. And yeah, like a lot of the designs, what's really cool is that you can see how some of the designs, especially in this one, you could see how they influenced Fire Punch later on. Like Shikaku is like, if Makima was an innocent Lolita, that would be Makima. And then like the monsters transform. Like the style and how it changes, sometimes it's really jarring. Like the style of eating people and everything is really jarring. I'm like, Fujimoto. Like some of the artwork is disturbing. Like the artwork of the aliens eating the people. And then when the one alien turns into the transforms into the superhero to save the girl, he looks like a character from both Fire Punch and Chainsaw Man, which is a lot of fun. But yeah, God and Fujimoto. Just the twists and turns. The twists about the girl meeting the alien in the theater when all the people were eaten, like how disturbing it all looks. Like Fujimoto has a dark, twisted mind from the start. Like, oh my God. And then I kept calling her Ami, but it could have been Amy too. But he knocked her out and then dressed up as the chicken to be with her. And he's like, I wanted to keep her safe. And then the crazy thing is, it like has the dramatic reveal of the fist, and like the chicken head cracks open, and he says he's gonna eat her to scare her away so that she'll leave and be safe. But he's like, he doesn't end up saving her. All the humans end up dying. And he's like, I want you to remember the story of how shortly before the fall of humankind. Yeah, and then there's the alien and everything that was destroyed before the fall of humankind. An alien and a human lived together hand in hand. That the couple collecting chickens were still kicking in the schoolyard. Oh my God. Yeah. And then he transforms into like this big monstrous alien and fights the other one. And that's where it ends. That's so crazy. Like, I like that first piece was just a way for Fujimoto to like learn how to create manga. Like, and it still ends up being this amazing story with twists and turns and reveals that's so well done. I'm like, damn it, Fujimoto. How? Then we have Sasaki Stop the Bullet, and come on, y'all. Come on. This one was, Sasaki Stop the Bullet was probably the most heart-wrenching, but was the most disturbing, but yet it's weird how Fujimoto combines those qualities of being disturbing and also hopeful. Like, he takes these emotions that are very contradictory and throws them into the same story. So I don't know what I was thinking. I thought for some reason that Kawaguchi was like a classmate that was just writing on the board because she had the hoodie on. But I'm thinking in terms of like an American classroom, not a Japanese one. So she doesn't have a uniform on. So of course she's not a student. But that didn't dawn on me. And the fact that he calls her a god. Mm-hmm. And he thinks about her. And the crazy thing is that he views her kind of the same way that the shooter does when he comes in, right? That he just wants to threaten her because she rejected him. And that is a very creepy scenario that is, it borders along the lines of being real, and it's kind of freaky because I'm not gonna lie, I get, like, I'm a pretty private person in real life, and that sort of thing freaks me out. Like, that there are people that can't disassociate, like, their emotions from that other people have their emotions as well. Like, she's like, just because I reject you, it doesn't mean you're a bad person. It just means I'm not interested in you. And some people, like, cannot accept that. Like, this guy can't accept that and blames her for all of his troubles just because she wouldn't have sex with him. And it's like, no. And she acts selfless and says, you can do anything, just don't hurt my students. And then the moment he says, then have sex with me, that drawing of him with the shadowed face and the eyes sticking out of the shadows is the creepiest freaking thing I think I've seen in a manga since I don't know when. It's haunting. It's haunting. It's haunting, and it's nightmarish. And it's very freaky. Nope. It just bores into my soul. It's so wrong. But she's like, she just wants him to let the students go. And he says, oh, sure, I will. And then the one student, he can't process it. And he's like, I can't stand the thought of this pure, innocent thing being forced to have sex with filth like him. Right? And so he's like, I'm not going to let her be sullied by you. He's like, I have to be the hero. No one else is speaking up. And then that moment where he's about to get shot with a bullet, the thing about it is that Fujimoto takes something that in reality we know would be something awful. Like him getting shot. Like in reality, that would be absolutely horrible. But he takes it and he transforms that moment into something surreal and beautiful and completely changes the outcome of the story. And that's where the look back comparison comes in, right? Because he tells her his plan about becoming an astronaut and how his dad died and he thinks he's on the moon. And I could kind of see where the story might have been going. I thought the boy was going to die and land on the moon with his dad, and that was going to be the story. And I was like, oh my God, Fujimoto, no. And then it just gets even crazier from there, right? It gets crazier from there. Because you think, like, it's all building up to this whole thing of he's going to die and go to the moon and see his dad there, and that's going to be the story. And then instead, she has this conversation about, well, I'm a god. And he's like, well, are you mocking me? How's that? And she's like, no. You have your common sense, I have my common sense. There's no such thing as absolutes. There's no such thing as zero chance. So you think what you want, I think what I want. Go be an astronaut. I hope you find your dad. And then he catches the bullet. And the thing about it is, it's Fujimoto taking something that we should know the outcome. The outcome is he's going to die when he gets shot. But Fujimoto, it's almost like he doesn't accept that reality. He wants to transform that reality. And, I'm getting emotional just thinking about it, but there's something beautiful about the idea of taking tragedy and transforming it into hope. And that's kind of what he does here, and it's so well done, like taking a moment that's so heart-wrenching and real, and then making it surreal and their own. What do you do with that? So, God, that story, like, it's hard for me to talk about because I will sit here and sob because it's beautiful. And the idea that there is no such thing as 0% chances. And they're like, Sasaki stopped a bullet. And then that's the title card. And people asking him, what is he? And then he convinces the man, he's like, I can stop the bullet because I'm from the future. And he convinces the man that, if you leave now, you will go to prison, but then you're going to study. And you're not going to die a virgin. You're going to meet like a wife and have kids and grandkids and be happy. The misery you feel right now was only temporary and momentary. And that's such a beautiful message too, because a lot of times when you know people like this, they get caught up in the moment and their own despair, that they don't think about the future and all the possibilities that it could get better. And this character goes through those motions with that character before he does something he'll regret. And it's just like, and it's almost like, if this was following real physics and logic, then he'd be dead and he wouldn't have this conversation with him. But because the story goes the surreal route, it enables him to have that conversation and for this to be real. And God, it's beautiful. And he says, "You're lying." He's like, "It can't be true. Don't act like you know. You've never seen the future." I want to cry. I want to cry reading it, so I can't reread it. I'll cry. And then just like in Fire Punch, you have another flashback. And in the flashback, it's Sasaki becoming an astronaut. And that got me. That whole thing where it's him becoming an astronaut and talking about stopping the bullet and bringing it back up again. It just absolutely gutted me, right? And he's like, both then and now, I can stop bullets. That's just common sense. And that Fujimoto wanted to put a meteor there. How dare you? How dare you? The emotion in this one and the meaning of it, I would talk more about it, but I will sob. It's right here, right now, all the emotions right here. And I don't feel like having a Violet Evergarden style sob fest. Just gotten over it. So, God, I can't wait to hear your comments below about this one. Because this one got me. This one was just tear me apart. Sasaki Stop the Bullet just tears me apart. Yeah, I can see why it's his favorite. Because it's the best one out of all of them. Maybe not the most fun, but it's the best. And then Love is Blind. I love that Love is Blind was just Fujimoto making a point to his editors. That is all that it was. Fujimoto's like, my editors are complaining that I take up too many pages to tell a story that could be told in half the time. He's like, my editors say I'm wasting pages, I'm wasting space. So you know what? I'll craft this story in 16 pages that will be ridiculous. And the funny thing about it is that he makes everything very deliberate. I'm headed home. Time to go home. Yes, sir. Shall we go? Yes, let's do that. And it's very choppy. And now it makes sense. That's all deliberate. He's just like, well, if you would let me have my 31 pages, we could have an elaborate conversation in this part of the story, but you're not going to let me do that. So instead, I guess I'll just have to make it really short and to the point. I was like, that is absolutely hilarious. And every time he'd get a hand on his shoulder being like just pulling him back around to get in his way, being like, hold on, Ibuki. I love it. And then that's the least of my priorities. I want to make that a catchphrase now. That is the least of my priorities. Absolutely ridiculous. I love it. And so first it's the instructor tries to stop them and he turns them away. And then it's the man that's trying to mug them on the street that he says is the least of my priorities and turns it away. Like a guy trying to shank them, but they have no money. And then and he gives them the uniform to sell. Ridiculous, right? I think Fujimoto just likes drawing people in their underwear. And so he's just like, let's just do it, right? And then the alien showing up. But again, there's a lot of Fire Punch style influence here. There's a lot of Fire Punch influence. There's a lot of, in the drawing style, things that go back to Fire Punch, that go back to some of his other works. It's pretty great. And then I love the alien that goes when he does his confession. I love the alien that he's like, I love you, will you go out with me? And he's like, get this, I beamed down in the middle of Earth to a love confession. It was totally not a good time to destroy the planet. I'm like, oh my God. It's just that dark humor, right? It's that dark humor that Fujimoto uses that is just so absolutely hilarious. I can't. It's so good. And the idea that this character, he keeps getting stopped over and over again, and he finally gets a chance to confess. I'm glad it ends happily. Like the first two stories, I mean, Sasaki stopping the bullet ends very not melancholy, but kind of just in a sobering way. And then the first one is just really heartbreaking, even though it ends with him stopping the alien. This has a happy ending. I was like, Fujimoto's all about them aliens trying to destroy the planet. I'm like, dude. But I love that in the end, he gets money from the homeless man, buys 2 drinks, one for the girl and one for him, and then has the lucky day and ends up getting the girlfriend. I love it. I love that he says the whole point was just trying to make a story in half the amount of pages. What a troll. What a bitch. I love it. But then there's Shikaku. When Fujimoto wants to write romance, he can write romance. Like the part about the last story that we just read was that one had a romantic element to it in the fact that love is blind and the fact that he gets with her at the end. He confesses and she accepts him, right? But here, this whole thing, this girl looks like Makima from Chainsaw Man. Like, Shikaku is basically Makima, like a prototype for her, right? And she's an assassin. And we see how her parents and everyone treats her poorly. And no one, like, forgives her when she apologizes. And so she just grows up being this cute soul that just happens to be an assassin. And then gets hired and to kill this man. The whole deal with the eyes was very much like, was very similar to Chainsaw Man. I was like, oh my god. But I love that the guy who is a vampire, Fujimoto also likes vampires. Fujimoto does a lot of stuff I've noticed with immortality and kind of the curse of it, and that immortality is not a good thing. He does a lot with that, and I am glad in this that the vampire did not end up alone. I'm glad he made her a vampire too, because she was in love with him. Like, that was really sweet. And the fact that she, like, tried to kill him, and then she was like, oh, Yuguru, that was his name. The fact that she tried to kill him, and he keeps growing everything back, and she's not freaked out by it. She's like, how are you still alive? And he's like, I'm a vampire. And she thinks it's amazing. And then she says she's sorry, and he forgives her. And the fact that he forgives her is, like, the one thing that she needed to hear, right? Now, granted, she does act like a Disney princess and immediately falls in love with him. But you know what? It's a short one shot. We can do better. But I also like Fujimoto. Fujimoto, we've been doing good. We've been doing good. We hadn't had sexy times this entire story, this entire collection or anthology. We had been doing all right. And then he starts showing her in her underwear on the bed. And I'm like, okay, we're still all right. It's fine. And then she realizes he's like the first person that accepts her. And then she just has like a damn orgasm on the page. And I'm like, why did we... Fujimoto, all right, hashtag feminism. You know, and then I like that the minions weren't killed. She just took their eyeballs. I like the one minion, he has like a pair of glasses on, like he can't see shit, and he's there. That's great. And then, yeah, the one guy, the vampire, asks her, like, what's the deal with the blood? And she's like, oh, it's not mine. And then he tells her she has a cold, and she goes to the hospital. And I love that she finds out that it's not a cold. And so going to the hospital, she questions, she goes, is it a good idea for me to go there when I'm wanted? But the man that she loves told her to, so she did. And then I like that she like leans out the window and she's like, I have a clean bill of health. It wasn't a cold. She's like, it's because I'm in love with you, Mr. Yuguru. And she's like, you must feel great knowing someone as cute as me is in love with you. She gets her like ear blasted off. And I like that the maid is like, wow, she's rather egocentric. And he just laughs and says that was the first time in 400 years he'd laughed. So of course he goes to save her. And again, very Fire Punch. Like the Fujimoto, like when you see the spread, it's very Fire Punch. It's like, and then he sees her. And I was like, I thought that it was at first going to just end with her dying. And I'm like, that's going to be so freaking sad. But as soon as the light was shining on her, I'm like, he's going to turn her into a vampire so she can live with him forever. And he does. He makes her a vampire. I just love him carrying it out. It's so romantic. She falls in love with him and he carries her out. It's so good. And then even 200 years later, she's still the same. It's really sweet. I loved that. I love it. And he's like, it's disgusting. You have to try it. And it's his birthday. I also like that Fujimoto admits that he wrote this entire thing while he had a fever. I'm like, Fujimoto, love you. Take care of yourself. Please take care of yourself. So yeah. I freaking loved this volume. I'm so glad I got it. It was so good. I am just baffled with Fujimoto and their talent. Like this is before he can even legally drink. How dare he? Like once he's able to legally drink, I wonder how that's going to change in 22 through 26. But just what I love about this too is that you talk about 17 years old versus 21. I mean, he's ahead of his time, clearly, like ahead of his maturity with the stories and the twists that they have. But I love that it has that kind of like young love, like naive innocence to it. Like there's so much with these, like a lot of the stories focus on love stories. Like a character falls in love and figures out that they are in love with this other character, which is a very 17 through 21 thing to experience, right? So I like the fact that he's experimenting with concepts of love and crushes in these really nuanced and intriguing ways that have like an element of horror, an element of sci-fi, an element of action, an element of macabre to them that makes them engaging. Like taking a trope that's somewhat tried and true and making it your own is not easy, and he excels in it. So it was so good. But if I had to rank them, that's so hard. If I had to rank the 4 stories, that's hard because there's like what I enjoy as a reader versus it's like quality is hard to quantify. One of those scenarios, because what I like as a reader may be different than what others like. And I mean, story and structure wise, they're all fairly even, right? It's hard to compare the two. But if I had to go back to the beginning, man, I like that the one story, Sasaki Stopped a Bullet, is on the cover of him being on the moon. I'd say that I have 2 rankings. One is purely emotional, and one is, you know, like if we were doing like a quality narrative check of like the elements of fiction versus my emotional reaction. If we were doing like quality wise and how it was structured, I would definitely say Sasaki Stopped a Bullet. And I would say Sasaki Stopped a Bullet, like quality wise, that is the number 1. But I'm like, do I want to put a story that made me sob horrifically as my number 1 favorite? Because I don't know if I'd read it again, because then I'll sob more times. So I would say for pure quality in narrative structure and everything, then Sasaki Stopped a Bullet is my number 1. But I'd say in terms of me enjoying it and getting like guilty pleasure, I would say Shikaku. I really like Shikaku a lot. But then again, I grew up with vampire stories, so that one I was just like, ooh, yes, instantly. I would say number 2, story element-wise, is A Couple Clucking Chickens, right? And I would say that my number 2 is probably A Couple Clucking Chickens too. I think that's probably my number 2. And then my number 3 is Sasaki, like, just only because I know it is the superior story, but I just don't want to cry again. And then Love is Blind is fun, but when you know it was just a farce and a troll to make a point to his editors, I'm kind of like, okay. But Sasaki Stopped a Bullet and A Couple Clucking Chickens both evoke kind of the same emotional response from me, only I cried more with Sasaki. But Shikaku is like my entertainment jam, but literary criticism wise, I'd think Clucking Chickens and Sasaki were the best ones. But man, so good! So good. So I am curious to know your thoughts down below, what you all thought of these manga, these one-shots, and what your order would be as well. So once it said April 18th was when 22 through 26 was coming out, I'll be back from my trip by then, so I will definitely be looking at that one-shot as soon as it comes out. So exciting times, but I'm curious to know your thoughts down below. I hope you all enjoyed this reaction discussion. This was Fujimoto. Just let me sing his praises. He's so good. But yeah, so I will be back very soon. I hope you all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and yes, I will be back very soon with more one-shots from Tatsuki Fujimoto. Bye.